Welcome back, everybody. This is the Aileron Hinge bracket assembly video. um, this is the Aileron Hinge attach brackets for both the left and right wing. And started working on this yesterday afternoon, evening, and then I finished them up mostly this morning. I still haven't gotten them installed yet, but we'll get to that. They're not particularly hard to build. However, there's 4 brackets, 2 for each wing, and they are all very different from each other. There's 2 of one type, 2 of another type, and then they're mirror images of each other because of the opposite wings, obviously. So they give you a small set of plans, and then obviously the bigger set of plans to reference while doing this. It's very, very easy to get these parts mixed up, and they all have different kind of angles cut into them, even some that are pretty subtle. So you want to make sure you get all of these right, so they fit exactly where they're supposed to without any interference with the ailerons and or flaps later on, depending on which bracket we're talking about. So I got them all mocked up, wrote on each of the parts what the part was as I pulled the blue vinyl off, and now you see me just taking them over to that Scotch-Brite wheel, cleaning everything up. The plans tell you specifically for the first time to prime certain parts. Usually they don't say anything about that, but they tell you to prime the mating surfaces of those angle brackets. So anywhere they're going to mate with something, they tell you to prime those, so the outside edges of those angles. So after I got done prepping all of this, I took them and primed them. It tells you do not need to prime the other parts. I chose not to. Whether I decide to spray something on the outside of them later or not, maybe. Will end up painting this airplane, and I'll do it with the ailerons and flaps off, so this part will probably get painted and primed at some point anyhow, so we'll see how that goes. Right now, just going through deburring all of the holes. There are a few holes on each one that gets countersunk, so you can use some flush head rivets. And again, I assume this is so it doesn't have interference with moving parts later on. And you have to pay close attention to which side the countersink goes to. And then we'll get to the riveting part here in a minute. And that was kind of a challenge. These are some of the longest rivets I've had to deal with yet. I think the longest one of them all was like a -11 or something. It's crazy long. You can see the flush rivet sitting there on the worktop right in front of the camera because I was using it to check the depth of the countersink I was doing. Also, it doesn't specifically tell you which way the domed head rivets need to go. I'm guessing it doesn't really matter since the thickness of all the material is roughly the same, so I just picked whichever side seemed to make the most sense, and that's what I went with. Normally you want the manufactured head on the thinnest material. Sometimes that's not always possible. Anyhow, just finishing the deburring while I'm letting the paint dry on the angle brackets. And then it's time to start putting all that together. Because of how thick these were and how long these rivets were, I ended up using almost every one of the flat sets I have there available, as well as the shorter ram for the squeezer. And some of them I had to go through a couple of times, squeeze them a little, and then put a thicker set on because I just didn't have enough with any given setup. And you see me studying the plan some more because I'm making sure that I'm doing all the countersinks right, because I just figured out there's a countersink that goes on a couple of those angle pieces as well. For the most part, this went really well. I think there was one rivet that got bent over as I squeezed it. You'll see me drill it out here in a minute. But for the most part, it's just constantly changing out those flat sets. There we go. Now I'm changing the ram out for the shorter one. And switching to the cup set for the domed head rivets. try to use the squeezer as much as possible. It does do a nicer job. This probably would have been a lot quicker had I just used the rivet gun and a bucking bar, but I figured it would be really hard to do it and hold that piece at the same time, so I made the squeezer work. In the end, the results came out pretty good. And those bearings fit in there really nice. There's a little machined pocket in those aluminum pieces they go in. And there you see me checking plans again, checking the test fit. Now I'm getting out the feeler gauges because the plans do call out and tell you to make sure you can't get a certain depth gauge anywhere in the part, and then around the shanks of the rivets it's even tighter. And all of mine were perfectly fine. Thing is squeezed together really well. The funny part is, as I'm doing this, I realize I haven't watched any of Chris's videos in a while, and I know he had, this is one of the more recent things he had done. So I went to watch the videos of him doing his aileron brackets, and that's playing in the background as I do this, and I'm listening to him, and he's running into some of the same things I am with trying to make sure, you know, you get the countersinks in the right spot and everything else. But here in a few minutes, he's going to mention something that completely catches my attention because it was something I almost completely overlooked. So once again, thank you for saving me some heartache, because I probably would have found these spare parts later on the shelf and been like, what the hell are these for? And I'm going to show them to you. You guys are going to laugh because it's very obvious that it's important and you shouldn't ignore it. Anyhow, more rivet squeezing. Whole bunch of it in this video. On another note, just got back from my EAA meeting this morning. I had taken my wing stands down there to see if anybody wanted them or had a use for them, since I'm now done with them. But nobody had any interest in them. So they are back home with me, and I'm already plotting on how to upcycle and repurpose them. So stay tuned for that. I might be adding some bits and pieces and things to them and turn them into either rolling stands for painting stuff, and or I might figure out a way to turn them into a rotisserie later on for the fuselage. That's going to be the next plan. No point in not finding a use for them. So the funny part, all this work you see me doing on these aileron brackets, Vans has definitely gotten to the point in instructions where they tell you as little as possible. They assume that you know how to do things by now, and they don't tell you step by step what to do. So that all of this stuff that you see me doing is one line of one instruction in the instruction manual. I should have taken a picture of it because it's funny. It just says to fabricate and install the Aileron hinge brackets according to drawing, whatever drawing number it was. And that's it. No, nothing else. No, hey, pay particular attention to these countersinks, or don't do this or don't do that. But I guess that's where we're at with the instructions now. I get why they do it, but I think it's a bit presumptuous to assume that we all know what we're doing by now. So anyhow, there's the thing I almost missed. Note the giant hot pink label saying important. There is a service bulletin for the Aileron hinge brackets. It came with its own parts kit. Like I said, I only remembered because I heard Chris talking about it in his video. You see me sitting there scrolling through it and watching it now. And you need to put these reinforcement brackets on underneath that middle hinge bracket. I guess there was some cracking noted in flying examples, and they came out with this service bulletin. So there you can see what it's supposed to look like and where it's supposed to go. It also came with longer rivets than what you would normally use to put that in. Thankfully, I heard that and caught it in time because I was getting ready to put that bracket on, and I would have had to drill out all those rivets and do it again later. So the problem is when the plans are written or when the instructions are written, they don't necessarily include directions for the service bulletins that come out after the fact. So when they do include a service bulletin in your kit, like they did with this, they just give it to you in a bag with, a giant hot pink thing to try and get your attention to make sure you remember that you're supposed to install this. It was sitting on my shelf. It was right there with all the other Aileron stuff, but that was months ago, and I completely forgot it was sitting there. Probably would have seen it later on and been like, what is this for? So note to self and note to anybody else out there, pro tip, when you get your kits, if you have bags with service bulletin stuff in it, I strongly recommend that you just go make a note in the actual directions in your instruction manual where that applies, and hey, see service bulletin, whatever. Anyhow, off my soapbox. So there you saw it all primed and somewhat installed. I'm going to have to shoot those with the rivet gun. I can't get the squeezer in there to squeeze it tight enough. And as I recorded this, it was about 5-6 o'clock in the morning. And while my shop is not near my house, really, I figured nobody would appreciate hearing the rivet gun going off that early in the morning. So I need to go back out there and finish that. In the interim, I decided to do some things I could do that were quieter. I am moving on to the flap brackets and aileron gap seals. So I'm getting those mocked up so I can final size drill them. Obviously I need to deburr, clean, and then I'm going to prime these things as well. A couple little gotchas on these. There were some clearance issues that needed to be dealt with. So here on the gap seal, it clecos in place really nice. It just barely kind of rubs right there on that aileron bracket. I just had to clean up the edge of the metal a little bit with the Scotch-Brite wheel. That was no big deal. On the flap support though, there's a spot where it overlapped two rivets and I couldn't figure out why. And obviously the directions don't tell you anything. I had to go back to the plan several times until I saw the actual bracket, and there's a little hatch mark area on the plans that tell you to remove metal. So once I go back there and look at it, which is what I'm doing right now, I realize there's two little notches, just like when they give you stiffeners, that you're supposed to cut between the lines. And I'll show it to you right here. There's a notch there and a notch there, and you cut out an angle. And then that allows it to clear the doubler on that aft spar along with the rivets that are there. So over to the bandsaw we go. Really nice having that stuff on wheels so you can move it around to get angles you can't normally get. And then over to the Scotch-Brite wheel, clean it all up. And I'll slow this down and give you a look so you can see the angle cut in it and what I'm talking about. Right there by the cleco. There you go. Pause it if you need to see, in case you're working on it and you're a little confused. I know I was for a minute. Now I'm just going to go through and final drill all of this stuff, deburr it, get it cleaned up. It has now been painted and primed, or primed I guess. It is sitting out there waiting for me to go install it, which is what I'm probably going to do after I get done editing this video. I'll go get that installed. Everybody's awake now. I can use the rivet gun, and that'll take care of the left wing. And then just got to do all the same stuff again on the right. Anyhow, I hope you're all enjoying it. Thanks for coming along. Leave me some comments below, questions if you have them. If you want to see different things or you have questions about why I did some stuff, by all means, feel free to ask. I try to answer everything I can. I will see y'all on the next one.